That 10 students who were camped out there would make the green a place that only people of one view could be. Honestly, I think that's what they did by making us frightened. I'm still hurting. I have nerve damage in my wrist. I have an injured shoulder. I have bruising and swelling, and it's very scary. And I'm getting better, but it's crazy that I should be in this position for trying to protect my students. And I say the same for other faculty who are out there, including Chris McEvitt, my colleague on the faculty, who was also arrested and also harmed.
Annalise Orlick, we want to thank you for being with us, Professor of History, Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies, former Chair of Jewish Studies at Dartmouth College, where she's taught for more than 30 years. Professor Orlick, among dozens of students, faculty, community members arrested at a Dartmouth encampment. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez for another edition of Democracy Now!
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them and are not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
Hi, this is Al McFarlane, host of The Conversation with Al McFarlane. You're listening to 90.3 FM, KFAI, Minneapolis. I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Well, always glad to acknowledge the fact that we have the fortune of following Amy Goodman and Democracy Now! What a powerful program. What a great voice she provides to humanity, to our community, our country, and to the world. And what power there is in truth-telling. Well, we want to claim our space in that arena, in that flow, and that's what we do here at The Conversation with Al McFarlane. And today's show is particularly connecting and connected because we're going to continue the discussion we had last week about the conflict in Palestine, in Gaza. And that'll be an important conversation. As last week, I think, maybe not on this show, but one of our shows last week, we had a young student at University of Minnesota join me and my partner, Antonio Roselle, talking about his experience with the encampments and the protest movements here in Minnesota. We'll continue that conversation today. Brother Omar will join us, and that segment of the program I'll be conducting along with Antonio Roselle. I believe we're going to have Yoji Sena joining us, as always, from Bahia in Brazil. Well, today we want to begin with our conversation with my friend and colleague, Alfred Babington Johnson, who's here at my invitation to keep talking about an important event unfolding on 25 May 25th, down at US Bank Stadium. And the objective, from my point of view, is to get everybody in town, everybody that's within earshot, eyeshot, distance of being in community, to show up as community, to be community on an important day. Babington, why don't you come on in and talk about the important event? It's called Minnesota Soul, but you give the full name and explain the wherefore of this important occasion.
You have, in fact, my dear brother, given the full name, Minnesota Soul. And what it is, Al, is about celebrating the richness that there is in community, and particularly acknowledging that as African American people, we have made great contributions to the United States, to the world, if you will. And wouldn't you think if we made these great contributions to the United States and to the world, it might also include the state of Minnesota? And Al, I think there's a false sense of things in many parts of the country, that Minnesota is a place devoid of African American talent and artistic accomplishment, or what have you. That is obviously not the truth. You've been here for decades, as have I, and you know that this is a place rich with art and creativity, imagination, professionalism, what have you. And so we're here celebrating that, Al, celebrating artistic accomplishments and celebrating community.
Another friend of ours, and one or two, I believe, have joined the program. Let's bring them in and talk about their roles. It was great for me to see when we were organizing the show today, my friend Walter Griffith. And we know that our friend Charles Caldwell, I think he's stationary as well. It's here, two great artists, Walter, a photographer, Charles Caldwell, a painter, a muralist, extraordinaire. Bring them both in, and let's have you talk about why and how these genius producers, creators are leading the way on this celebration on 25 May.
Al, you couldn't have said it better. Genius is a word that I'd attach to either of these gentlemen. But more than that, I would say community builder for both of them, because they bring great artistry, but they bring a sense of history, a sense of community, and it's reflected in their work and it's reflected in their lives. I'm just delighted that these two giants are with us on today, Al. And Walter, who we've known them both for decades, but Walter is an import from Chicago, and I'm not sure, Charles, where do you hail originally?
Arkansas. Arkansas.
So they both have journeyed here to the state of Minnesota and are enriching our lives, and so we're delighted that they're with us, Al.
So let's start with Walter. Walter, how you doing, man? Good to see you. You and I go back years and years and years, so it's always a pleasure to see you. How are you, first of all, and what do you bring into this day?
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be on this program with all of you, and I have known all of you for many, many, many decades.
That's right.
And
so what are we going to see from you at the event?
What'd you say? I couldn't hear you.
What are we going to see from you at the event?
Well, I've been photographing for 70 years. So I am going to show some of my work, some of my photographs, some of my historical interpretations of things and people and situations that I have experienced in that 70 years.
There's also, Al, I might add, there's a documentary on Walter and his journey, if you will. And we are going to have that in one component of this celebration where we're at with Daniel Bergen helping to curate it. We're going to be showing some Black filmmaking and Black capturing of issues down through the years in that way as well. And Walter's documentary will be part of that.
Great. I'm going to ask you to talk about some of your history, your stories that come to mind, Walter, in a couple of seconds. Let me bring Brother Charles Caldwell in. Brother Charles, good to see you again. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Al. Good to see you as well, as always.
Well, you and I have an ongoing project that you're doing. You're painting a mural right now on the Kemp's Milk building on West Broadway. And you started it last summer. You're finishing it this year. And we are going to be doing one of our shows outside your mural, because one of the elements of the mural is to talk about what peace looks like in our community, and to elevate the people that are ignored and overlooked sometimes, and to determine and reveal the glory that they possess simply because they exist.
Amen.
And you do that with the spirit of healing. I think that's powerful.
Yes, that's great. Right. And that explains my lateness today. I was just setting up the fenced in area that I have on Broadway and Lindale in the strip mall. And it's a healing space that you're right, I created and started last year. And I'm super excited about it this year because I'm going to be doing a community dedication of this mural on August 10th. Nice free day for the community, food, entertainment, and just some healing conversation, and just a embrace, a big hug for the community as I dedicate this mural on August 10th. So I'm very excited about that. And
so
then,
Edmonton, share with me again and our listeners and viewers how you conceived this day, why this day, and what is the objective? What is the reason for us gathering and discovering ourselves with each other?
Yeah. Al, the journeys that all of us have been on for decades, I think, are rooted in the fact that there is community. The story doesn't start with any of us. The story preceded us, and by God's grace, it'll follow after us. But I do believe that God cares about us dealing with one another. He cares about community. And I think in community, there's healing. In community, there's support. In community, there's propulsion into the next arena. And so had an opportunity to put together something that would be a festival in respect to Black folk. And so we're calling it Minnesota Soul for the reasons that I mentioned before. And Al, I couldn't be more excited about what we've been able to gather in the way of talent. We're going to have 2 stages. And when we start, we're not going to stop till we finish. There'll be action on the stages continuously. There'll be a dance floor where Kevin Johnson will be teaching step, but also there'll be different ones in our community that are dancers, different companies. They will have different turns in the dance floor. We will have, as I mentioned, the film area where there will be a retelling of various Black created projects. And then there's the area we call the griot. The griot area, we call it the griot area because we think everybody in our community is part of our story. We're lifting up the narrative, you know. And when you go down there and you see Caldwell and you see some of the works that he's created, which you can certainly buy, you know, and you see Griffin and the photography that he presents. Then we're going to have a mural that's actually created out of the event, and different areas where people are able to actually get involved themselves in painting and what have you. It's just going to be, I think, a real time of lifting up an experience of community.
Where did the idea come from, and why this date?
Well, quite this date just happened, Al. There was no intentionality of that, although it does also happen to be an anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. And so there's that notion of life going forward, if you will. But it's also something we wanted to do to allow the community to be in a safe space. We'll be in US Bank Stadium. And we'll have the kind of protocols on entrance that are appropriate in this day and age. So folks can come and they can let down their anxieties and they can celebrate and they can feel the power of the creativity of these wonderful ones with us, and more to come.
Charles, I'll ask you first and then Walter. I always love stories. You guys are creators and you're attuned to the unfolding of life in a way that many people are not sensitive to. We experience it, but we just don't pay attention to it. I think as artists, you pay particular attention to the details of existence. And in that spirit, Charles Caldwell, when you reflect over your body of work and the things that you have produced, what comes to mind? Are there some pieces that tower above the rest as singular accomplishments or statements about the world and your ability to put your hands around it?
Well, when thinking about that question and answering it, I got a piece that I did, a portrait collage of Dr. Martin Luther King. And it's a piece that I did in '86. And when I look at that piece today, there's not a stroke that I would change or do differently in it. And so I think about what inspired me to create that piece, being raised in a single family home. That was one of the males that I looked towards. And so I wanted to create something that was going to last for over more than my lifetime, but something that was just extremely honorable, to just pay tribute to that. And I think May 5th is kind of a cultivation of presenting the artists and the creativity and the community in this state honorably, since we've been presented so honorably in this community. I think it's just going to be a lot of inspiration in that day. And I think as an artist, I'm just thinking about it. And as I create here in my studio, the works that I create, I just try to present that positive, safe experience to be able to look at something and just let yourself be at peace for a moment privately with the creative art, a captured moment in a photograph like Brother Griffin here captures. Is those moments that sometimes we only get a moment to feel peace in our life, because we're faced with so much in front of us that we're just trying to survive on a daily basis. So I'm excited about being a part of the day. I appreciate Mr. Babington here, longtime friend. Thank you for just including me.
Oh, you kidding?
Such a great vision and such a great opportunity to offer the community a free day in a safe space.
Amen.
I'm thankful for that and look forward to it, because we're at ease when we're at peace.
Yes.
And, I feel the peacefulness that's going to come into this day.
Charles, when did you know that you were an artist?
You know, I moved to the state of Minnesota, as I mentioned earlier, from Arkansas on my 7th birthday. I had no idea about myself being an artist at that point in time. But as I journeyed on and got familiar with the new place and the new life, I ended up in 6th grade finding out that art was something that was in my soul that I wanted to search and find. And I was able to have that moment in that experience in the 6th grade. And from that point on, that has brought me forward. And I've seen what it has done for me, what it has done for my community, my family. It's just something that I thrive and I'm a natural born artist. It was able to discover it, and great supporters and encouragement comes from you guys. I want you to know that right here at this point in time, the level of respect and encouragement that you guys have towards me and my creations that's inspirational for me. You know, as I said, I was raised in a single family home by my great late mother, who done an amazing job to make me the man that I am today. But it's just it's kind of a peacefulness to meet elders like yourself and share the stage of respect and honor.
We're not that much older than you.
When y'all were talking the decades earlier, I was like, okay, well, let me see now. A few decades in there, but we certainly have spent some decades together, you know, in the 30s and 40s. And, you know, so I'm thankful for that. And I'm finding that out every day. That you know, life is an evolving change that will continue as long as we're here.
For those who are watching on the radio, Brother Charles is stroking his gray beard and signifying or notifying that he's got some wisdom time behind him as well.
Al, I just want to say, just because Griffin doesn't have a beard doesn't mean that he isn't aged.
He's shaving. He's shaving.
Walker, let me go to you with the same question. When did you discover yourself to be an artist? When did you meet the artist that you became? And how?
What happened in 3rd grade, I took a photography class in SAS. And I went into the dark And in the dark room, you have developing and printing. And I submerged a piece of white paper into developer, and it came out with an image. I knew I was a magician. And that is what got me started in this stuff, that I knew that I could make magic. And I knew that I could create things that I would see that other people would never have a chance of seeing. Now, and that is one of the things that I have been lucky to do, to see things and to be able to capture. And then as I aged, I decided the way that I would share my work with my community is through exhibiting. And so to date, I've had over 150 solo shows, and I don't know how many group shows. So I am always trying to show, not trying to show out, but I'm trying to show and allow people to see the things that I see. My problem is I see everything. And sometimes it's a curse, because I say, oh, did you see that? But you see it and I capture it. But I decided a while ago that I would let everyone see what I saw, which sometimes is unbelievable.
It's amazing. So tell me, walk me through some of the things that have been most phenomenal from where you stand on your side of the camera that you have tried to document or to capture in some way for posterity. Are there some stories that stand out with you, Walter?
Yeah, there's always a story connected to everything. So in 1990, I got to photograph the 25th anniversary of the Civil Rights March in Selma, Alabama. So I was with John Lewis for 8 days straight. Wow. We hung out, we talked, he introduced me to people. I got 60 years of education in 8 days. And I was able to get that, what I call important photograph with him on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which tells that story. And so a lot of people don't realize that Martin Luther King wasn't the first person to do the march on Edmund Pettus Bridge. It was Dr. Hosea Williams and John Lewis who spearheaded the very first one. And so history needs to be shown, and those people need to be recognized. And so through photographing and documenting them, I bring that to life through those historical images that I've had an opportunity to capture.
That's awesome. I'm Al McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. My guest is Brother Alfred Babington Johnson. He leads the Stairstep Initiative, Stairstep Foundation, and is here talking about an important community gathering on 25 May at US Bank Stadium. The event is called Minnesota Soul. It's free. It's all day. He said once it starts, it won't stop till it ends. It's going to be a safe environment for everybody to show up, enjoy, dance, sing along, witness and purchase art and probably crafts, enjoy good food, just a way that we get together to be ourselves with each other.
Amen.
And Babington, let me ask you to extend the invitation again.
Al, we will be at US Bank Stadium on the 25th of May. That's the Saturday that falls in the middle of the Memorial Day weekend. And we are expecting the richness of that moment to propel us forward as a community, to help us recognize our connectedness and make a determination to walk forward together. Come on, the 25th of May, US Bank Stadium, as Al said, is free to the public. You'll have extraordinary experiences with artists like Charles Caldwell and Walter Griffin. It's going to be a good time.
I want to go back to the two images that we've discussed. Walter discussing the photography, the learning of meeting Brother Lewis at the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and then Charles, you mentioned Dr. King. And so ask you both, in terms of your sense of the nature of change in the world, what did these men, these brothers, represent as you saw it and as you see it now? And what does your interaction with them mean for you personally? What has it meant for you personally going forward in your career? Charles, what do you think?
I think, during the time that we were in the struggle and in the times with Dr. Martin Luther King's and the march in the streets and the determination to be included and be able to move around freely, if you will. I think during the 60s, I was born in 63. And so during the 60s and the 50s and during the whole movement, and I think that we had a energy and we had a belief that together we could make some things happen. And where we're at today, it seems like so many things have happened that didn't include us, that we think that there's that togetherness that's just we're not moving in that ball of fire together, making a pathway for ourselves as a people and as a culture, to where our young people today understand that together we can make things happen and make it better for ourselves and our families, as far as that individualized mentality. Social media, we didn't have social media then. And so we have social media today, and it's a blessing and a curse. Yeah, it shows and it exposes things that we could never imagine, but it also it exposes a lot of the truth, but it do fabricate and present a lot of lies. So what's happening for me today is just the disconnect that we're experiencing. Even with the art, as an artist, sometimes some things will pop up on social media, like the big AI revolution, to where it looks like a painting and looks like an artist like myself sat down and did it, but it was computerized and hit like a button. So just to continue to convince people that ain't nothing like the real thing.
It all needs soul.
Yeah, the soul is what's missing. And so I try to just kind of keep putting that soul out there as I'll be introducing some new works and some new vision.
Walter, what are your thoughts?
It was eye-opening for me being in Alabama. Prior to we drove through Mississippi, coming into Alabama and coming through Tennessee, and it was the site of the new Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, Tennessee, and there was a lady who had been protesting out there for 757 days, and this was in 1990, and she's still protesting, and she was saying that this museum should actually be a memorial to Dr. Martin Luther King. And I got a chance to talk to her. But then as we moved further and got into Selma, and I began to meet people who were so important with the struggle, I got a chance not just to spend time with Congressman John Lewis, but I met and photographed the first registered Black voter in Alabama. And just historical things and it guided me to decide, maybe earlier I decided that I would be a documentary photographer, and what I would photograph would be what people would see. It would not be anything manipulated. So I decided that much early on in my life, but just having the opportunity to be with all of these people and meeting freedom riders, meeting freedom riders from Minnesota and from Tennessee and from Mississippi, who decided that it was so important for us to try to have our rights. Those are the things that really influenced me to continue on my photographic journey, and just the education that I learned about what it was like being there. I could only imagine the history, and I got a chance to experience some of the history because I was there, not in the meat grinder, but I was there with people who had been there, who had made these personal sacrifices. And it was so enlightening to me. And I knew through that I had a responsibility to share those things, those images and those visuals with other people who would never have had the opportunity.
Listen, gentlemen, thank you both so much for being here. Thank you for being yourselves, for all that you do. Let's figure out a time to have both of you back on again. Charles, you've been on several times, but Walter, to get you back and come back with the catalog, a deck of your pictures. Just have you walk us through some of the memories that you've created and captured with your camera. And Charles, same thing, maybe some slides of some of your shows, or be in your studio where you are now, just walk around and point to some of the things that you have worked on that you have available. Well, let me remind people, the event is 25 May, US Bank Stadium, Minnesota Soul, minnesotasoul.com for more information. A great event, a gathering of people all day from 11 to 6 p.m. Once it starts, it won't stop till it's over. 2 stages, lots of food, lots of dance, lots of music, and lots of joy. I think that's the operative element here, is how do we develop and share the joy that we bring to each other and to humanity.
Amen.
Babington, thank you, man.
Thank
We're going
you.
to be back again, because I want to have you keep coming and bring different people back.
Okay.
So we keep the event top of mind in our community.
Thank you for all you do.
All right. Thank you all.
you.
Okay.
I'm Al
nice.
McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm going to continue the program, and I want to bring in Brother Antonio Roselle and Brother Omar. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Antonio is an engineer, a urban designer, but also I would call him this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Antonio, a peace worker, a person who has worked locally and internationally for the cause, the mission of peace. And he also combines that with a passion for planning for ordinary people in ordinary circumstances in cities and communities around the country and around the world. And Antonio has this unique analysis, not unique, but a proper analysis of some of the crises we are experiencing and witnessing around the globe today. Antonio, good afternoon and welcome back to the conversation. How are you doing? Unmute. And while you're unmuting, let me say to those who are watching or viewing the program on any of the social media platforms, either Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, we want you involved in this conversation as well. And you can go to the comment section, say hello, shout out your town, your community, your campus, but also if you have a question, drop the question in the comment section. And we'd like to most of all recognize you and thank you for being a part. And we also want you to share the fact that you're a part of this process. So we want to keep growing our subscriber base. If you haven't subscribed, go to YouTube, YouTube/Inside News MN and become a subscriber, share, and like. We appreciate that. Antonio, how you doing, man?
I am doing great, Al. Thank you so much for the invitation to be part of the show today, and thank you for that introduction as well. Thank you. Yes, I am excited to be one of the people who are contributing to like all of us, building a better world for everybody, right? And some of it through my work in planning and engineering, some of it through some of the important conversations that we are all part of. So yes, thank you very much.
Well, we had a great conversation last week with a young brother who's a student at the university, I think, hopefully graduating this week, Brother Omar. And if he's here, let's bring him in because I want to just carry the conversation for it. Omar, we don't have a visual with you, just your voice, and that's great. We're on radio anyway. So thank you, Omar. How are you? Good to see you. And congratulations on coming to the completion of your undergraduate studies, I think, at the University of Minnesota.
Yep. No, thank you guys so much for having me today. And thank you, Antonio. Thank you, Al, for this great introduction.
So, Antonio, set up the conversation, sort of review what we talked about last week, and what should we cover today in this conversation?
Well, last week we spent a little bit of time discussing the encampments that many universities now throughout the United States and through the world, students are really having a very a clarity about the situation that we're witnessing in Gaza and the wholesale live stream slaughter that we are seeing there every single day now for 7 months. Students have put themselves, their safety, their well-being, their academic work on the line and have said to universities, we are going to be present here and in this encampment, we are going to be here until you divest the billions and billions of dollars. I think University of Minnesota has something like $7 billion in investments in companies that are either producing weapons for Israel or are in Israel, for example. And it's so it was an incredibly beautiful and intense time. I did not encamp like the students there who were there 24/7 for I think 5 or 6 days through the cold and through the rain, and that multiplied through campuses throughout the nation as a way of putting pressure on the universities to pull that money out and to stop facilitating the slaughter that we are seeing. And that's not the only place where we in the United States are facilitating that. The United States every day sends weapons, sends billions of dollars to the Israeli military and the Israeli government. President Biden is complicit. Here in Minnesota, our 2 senators, Amy Klobuchar and Senator Tina Smith, both of them have voted for $26 billion recently, like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Well, the only member who's not voted of our congressional delegation would be Ilhan Omar, correct?
Yes.
Everybody else is obviously on board.
Yeah, Ilhan Omar is the only person that has clarity about this, the only one who has actually followed through in the voting record. And so, but our students have clarity and have put themselves on the line and have actually had great success. So maybe that's a great opportunity. Omar, I don't know if you'd like to say some things about that.
Omar?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, part of what like sparked the encampments across the country. I mean, it started in Columbia University, and Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's daughter was actually one of the students that were arrested there. And I think it goes back to this thing where no one expected this to go on for 7 months, and it's only been getting worse. But the problem is that people at first were pretty impacted by it, and then people started to desensitized by it. At first, the first hospital that got bombed, people were like, no way this happened. Now Gaza has no hospitals left. Gaza has no universities left. So this sparked the cause and the struggle back up again, because people were starting to get desensitized to what was happening in the media. To them, seeing corpse was normal to them again. Divestment has been an initiative. I mean, honestly, at least for the University of Minnesota, students have been trying to divest since 2016. So it's been 8 going on 9 years now. In other universities, it's been longer. But I feel like right now we have not been this close to it. To correct you, so the University of Minnesota overall, so it's one of the top 30 universities across the nation for endowments. We don't know what they're invested in. And as a public university, they're not disclosing that and not being transparent about it. They a lot of that money goes towards weapon manufacturers and defense contractors, and we can see that based on who's hiring at the career fairs. Why is their companies complicit in war crimes and human rights violations, hiring students, and why are they welcome on campus? Why are they doing workshops on campus? Why is the CIA doing workshops on campus? That's really where what we're going after right now. Not a lot of people, I think government officials undermine the power of the students and what students can do. And those encampments really just showed how much bending one little rule is going to make them so uncomfortable. Because honestly, at the University of Minnesota, they said how they sent the cops over because we did not follow university policies when it came to the encampments. But truth be told, when has following their rules really made a change? Shown out through history. I gave this speech one time, and I gave an example of the Black Lives Matter protests that came out in 2020. The governor came out and he was like, you guys can protest until 5 p.m. then go back home because there's a curfew. If people really it's kind of a joke, because they put you in do whatever you want as long as it does not cross our own lines, because if it crosses change really only happens when you cross that line. And that's what we learned throughout history.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not hurting anyone. We're just crossing one little line that an oppressor has put forth to us. So, and we've seen how much that makes them uncomfortable, how much that scared them off. The first day they sent over riot police to us. So I think that those encampments really showed not just the true color of universities and where the system is, but really also the power of the students too.
When did you personally become an activist, Omar? What's your own personal evolution into, I'm sure like everybody else, you're just an ordinary student, in grade school and kindergarten and grade school and high school. But at some point in time, you began thinking about and deciding to voice your developing opinions as they were developing about things in the world and things in the community. How would you describe your process of evolution personally?
I feel personally, I was born in Egypt, and I was growing in Egypt during the Arab Spring, and that was the main influence, or the main thing that sparked politics and activism in me. And then here, I feel this generation overall, from what we've seen, we've grown up to wars all around, so social, I know we were talking about social media before too. Mm-hmm. So it's very hard to not be an activist or to not stand up for what's right in this generation. And you can clearly see who isn't and why they aren't. There was one of the counter protests that happened at University of Minnesota. It was I think it was 5 or 6 people that were holding up Israeli flags, and they were just there, and only one of them was a student. And the student, they were asked why are you here? And then they were oh, I don't want them to divest. And they're why don't you want them to divest? And they're well, if they divest, Honeywell is on their list, and I want to get a job at Honeywell. If they divest, I can't get a job at Honeywell. So really, the people who aren't following a revolution or speaking up for what's right, it's mainly for their own sake more than it is that they believe it's wrong.
But they're willing to withhold their own commitment to a principled course for the potential reward of a job, you're saying. And maybe you can blame them for not, or maybe you cannot. Maybe you can blame them or not blame them. It's their choice to make that decision.
Yeah.
So, the divestment thing is of interest, though, because disinvestment campaigns have worked in the past. Antonio, talk about sort of the history of that and why there is a belief that it can work again now. Dynamics are somewhat different, but talk about it.
It's a really interesting case if we go back in history a little bit to the last set of student-led campaigns for divestment, and that was during the apartheid time in South Africa. Mm-hmm. And those campaigns and the attention that they garnered and the divestment that they eventually led to were what led to an extreme weakening on this of the South African existing regime and their government and their apartheid practices, and eventually led to their end. And it was, it kind of, and it had, of course, a very committed component. It was international, as what we see now. And I think that, we always look to the past and we kind of stand on the shoulders of giants, right? We learn from what people who have been working for justice have done previously and the situations that they have lived through and seen, and the messages that they have given us that we carry to today. And that's one of the, I think, the great learnings too to bring into this. It can be effective. It is effective. It has worked in the past. There is always going to be resistance. There is going to be, in many cases, I mean, we've heard now of these terrible repression in different universities. Here at the University of Minnesota, it has been, in a way, hello, Joji, in a way, to the credit of the administration, and I want to recognize that, they did not go down that path after all, right? They were. It seemed like they were going to, and they had, like Omar said at the start, they brought the police in riot gear, etc. But through the concerted action of the students and the wider community, because it was the students, but they also were not alone. There is a community of people who are also active in the peace and justice community, and also regular people who said, hey, these are our children. This is our university. This university belongs to me. I went there. We have to take care of our children, of our students. We have to take care of who we are as a people. Minnesota has a distinct culture in the United States too. And if we say that we are for human rights, if we say we are for justice, if we say we are for the right to express ourselves in a respectful way, if we, now when you go to a meeting, oftentimes there are land acknowledgements where people acknowledge how land was taken from the original inhabitants here. All of that is part of this conversation related to Gaza and Palestine and all that is happening now. I just, this might also be something that to chat about in the conversation, is that the university said to the students, we agree to meet with you and we agree to these demands. And the students, in exchange, you pull up the encampment. The students in 2 hours picked up the encampment after the students had a chance to discuss and pull up. But there is follow-up that the university needs to do. And I do believe that today actually is the day that the university agreed to disclose what those investments are and where they are. So that's a question. Maybe Omar, I don't know if you have any information about that. And of course, I also want to, I don't know, Joji, you've been listening in, and if you have other thoughts too that you want to share with us.
Yeah, today they sent over information on the public information that they could find, just making it more transparent. Which is actually, I mean, a lot of our guesses were right. Turns out it's like they have money in Caterpillar, they have money in Honeywell, they have money in Lockheed Martin, they have money in Boeing, and General Dynamics. So it's like a lot of those companies are like what we were talking about in the first place. We talked about how those companies, we talked about like the human rights aspect of it. It's not just that they hurt. It's like it's about Palestine, but it's also about human rights. Like those companies, like Honeywell drones, are the same drones that were bombing Somalia and Pakistan at one point during Obama's terms. Mm-hmm. And General Dynamics is white phosphorus. They also do the same technology on the U.S.-Mexico border that like spies on like minorities and on groups crossing the borders. Like Lockheed Martin, they have war crimes in Yemen and Iraq. So like those, like an academic institution should not be invested in those companies. it should not welcome those companies on its campus, because at this point, it's at this point it's a business. It's not really an academic institution anymore.
Omar, if you would, maybe among your colleagues, you have people that are going to examine the documents, the reports that the university gave you, and maybe you generate some analysis and some synopses. We'd love to have that for our work in journalism, in reporting. Let me bring Yoji in. Yoji, we're tight on time, but you were part of the conversation last week, several we've had, talking about the conflict in Gaza, the war against Hamas, and the pain that is being unleashed on Palestinians. Any thoughts or comments? Anything new that you watched or heard, Yoji?
Well, Brazil is engulfed now in the tragedy that's happening here in the south, where the city of Porto Alegre is underwater. It's the first time, the biggest flood since 1941. So 80% of the state it's flooded. So the Palestinian issue has taken a backseat, I would even say, to Madonna being here. But still many people are paying attention. The commotion that causes the conflict in Brazil, it's much smaller than the United States, because Brazil is not involved in the Middle Eastern as a major player because of oil, things like that. So our position of the government is more neutral, or in many cases, historically Brazil has a diplomacy that's neutral, but in this case, Brazil, it's I would say very close to the Palestinian cause, and but my personal take is how morally all this is convoluted. For example, as Omar said, that a university like the University of Minnesota being investors in companies that are waging war, that companies that profit from war. Therefore, the university profits for war, and the same university has classes on human rights and has beautiful statements of enlightenment. It's one more time this hypocrisy of the Western system that many times we even come to question the idea of democracy, right? Not being in the same boat as the people of the right wing, but it is a moral debacle one more time that becomes so clear to me. The double standards, the protection of European interests in European bodies, and for example, Hamas has accepted the
ceasefire proposal from Qatar,
right?
Yeah.
And at the same time that they accepted, the Israeli go take over the Rafah crossing and continue infliging death and pain on the population. And now they're not in agreement with the acceptance of the proposal by Hamas. So there's moments that I lack words or even a position of indignation, because I cannot go further. It just you feel powerless, depressed, and cynic.
Let me stop you there because I want to keep the program moving. Omar, thank you, and congratulations again on your coming up graduation. Antonio, thank you. What I want to do, Omar, is invite you back, because I really want to get a sense of what kind of world you see yourself creating. And I'm speaking to you as an elder speaking to a young person. And my speech suggests wants to make sure you know that we, the elders, have high hopes and great expectations, but we think that means that we have to listen to how you visualize, envision, and intend to create a reality that is humane, that is sustainable, and that is aware. So I'm going to ask you to come back. Antonio, thank you, my friend. And Yogi, thank you. You guys can hang out if you want to, because I want to bring in Coach Leah for the last part of the show. Coach Leah, how you doing? Good to see you. I know you've got some things going on in Texas there, but we got a few minutes, and we always want to spend a few minutes with you week after week after week. How you doing?
Doing pretty great. Listen, thanks for leaving the guys on, because I would love to have some quick, short comments about what I'm about to talk about. Just chime in, all you guys. So first, this is what I have. So we've got the Lynx debut that was last Friday, and this uproar with how the WNBA has decided to limit the broadcasting of these preseason games. It's insane. So, however, shout out to Minnesota native and longtime Lynx fan, Allie Schneider, who live streamed the game on Friday, the untelevised game against the new look Chicago Sky and their SEC first rounders, Angel Reese and Carmilla Cardoso, from her mobile device on Twitter. Well, it's X now. Isn't that wild? She garnered, and I want to make sure I get this number right, over 200,000 live viewers and more than 2.5 million views since. Isn't that insane? People were like, oh my God, I can watch the game right now, or oh my gosh, I can watch the replay. So, I mean, it's insane. You've probably been hearing a lot there locally for sure about that whole thing. What is the WNBA going to do about making the right decision for their broadcast moving forward? That's my question. What do y'all think?
Antonio, thoughts?
Well, I would say that it's obviously interest and a demand, and I think that they would be foolish to not just broadcast that. There's certainly people who are everybody's interested in watching it. That's what they get from those numbers, I would say.
Absolutely. So this question I open up to everybody. I would love for you to put your comments in the chat now. If you're watching live now, that's great. If you're going to do a watch on demand later when you have some time, please put your comments in there. Would love, to send the information to the WNBA. I know a few people there. You know what I'm saying? But or you can send an email to me at coachleah@insightnews.com. Let me know what your thoughts are about that. So I know we've only got a few more minutes, so I want to take a quick pivot to the NBA and the playoffs right now, and then our Timberwolves. I always say our Timberwolves because they will always be my favorite NBA team. And who's the next face of the NBA? Undisputably, it's got to be Anthony Edwards. Our shooting guard notched 27 points against the last year's world champion Denver Nuggets. The Timberwolves are up 2-0 in the Western Conference semifinals right now. They won a big game Monday night, 106 over 80 points. And so this is insane. The Timberwolves are playing phenomenal basketball right now. And so if you have a chance to check out any of the playoff games, got to be sure to catch the Timberwolves. Right now, again, they lead the series 2-0, and then they'll be heading back to the Twin Cities soon to play their games against the Nuggets in Target Center. Then we've got the Thunder and the Mavs. Their series will be starting tonight, 9:30 Eastern time. We've got the Celtics and the Cavaliers, who will play their first game of the Eastern Conference semifinals tonight. Then you've got the Indiana Pacers and the New York Knicks. The Knicks are up 1-0 in the Eastern Conference semifinals. And so they're much more, I won't say much more competitive. All the games right now are really, really exciting. So, but I wanted to just return back to the Wolves real quick. So we know that Coach Finch had his knee surgery, and he's been kind of coaching from the second row. And it was a really nice comment made by one of the players. I think it was Anthony Edwards, when he was asked, how does it feel to have one of the associate coaches leading the charge right now? And he said, you know what, we're on voice. It's just as if coach was still there. And that right there, folks, is the reason why they're having such a phenomenal season, because you can tell that that wasn't scripted. That wasn't, all of this is not quote unquote orchestrated. They took the time to have the kind of chemistry all the way up from the coaches all the way down to the water boys to just be able to have this phenomenal season. But I wanted to give a quick shout out to the very first professional sports team doctor in the NHL, Dr. Joel Boyd, who also does work with the Minnesota Vikings, but he's always in the mix with sports stuff. So I'm quite sure that he had something to say about the surgery that Coach Fish just had as well. So really quick, 79 days until the Olympics, people, the Summer Olympics. And I need you to make sure you catch next week's edition of Insight News. I'll be writing about the 2024 Summer Olympics and how for the first time there are several sports that will be in the Olympics, and then there are several sports that will be missing. You will notice that
we got to cut it right there, Coach Leah. We're out of time. This will be up to the wire here, but thank you so much. Thank you so much, Antonio. Thank you, Yoji. Thank you, Omar. And we'll come back and talk more. We'll see you next week. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. See you next time.